You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Governor Pritzker continued his tour across Illinois cities and towns this week, promoting parts of his budget proposal that would offer some tax relief to people for property taxes, grocery taxes, or gas taxes. But how much of that will carry long term into years to come? Joining us now is House Republican Mark Batinick. It's good to have you with us. I think the last time we joined you remotely. It's good to have you in the building here. Welcome back to Springfield.
Thanks for having me on.
Could Governor Pritzker's budget be balanced without federal stimulus?
Oh yeah, I believe it. I believe it could. And what we had talked about before, what's really helping us balance the budget is we are on an inflation-induced sugar high that affects the revenue side of the budget before it affects the expense side of the budget. So that's really what you're seeing, and you're seeing this play out throughout the nation.
I guess so there's the direct effect of the feds handing a big, giant check to Illinois. Here you go, here's money.
Right.
But then there's that indirect effect of the stimulus that went out to everybody, and then the way they spent those dollars. The state captured a lot of the revenue from those transactions.
Correct. So, for example, we're seeing over 7% inflation, and you're seeing 7% wage inflation on the revenue side. So, as people have higher wages, that's going to increase the amount of money coming to the Treasury. But so is things like when you have to pay more for a used car, you're paying more for food, or our gas has doubled basically, right, in the last couple of years. So what you're seeing is you're seeing on the revenue side, the money that's coming into the state being inflated because of inflation, but you're not seeing that effect on the expense side yet. So this was one thing that is somewhat helpful is on the bonding side, our bond payments are flat. That's not affected by 7-8% inflation. What we had set in our budget to give to schools, social services, so on and so forth. Big part is our labor contracts, our long-term labor contracts. So temporarily, you're not seeing the effects of inflation on the expense side, but you will soon. Eventually, state workers are going to come back and say, hey, there was 7-8% inflation, I need more than a 2 or a 3% raise. Social service groups are going to say, we can't hire people to work, we can't pay our gas bill, we can't pay our electric bill with a 2% annual bump. So what eventually you're going to see is you're going to see expenses catch up with the revenue side, and what follows inflation oftentimes is a downturn in the economy, which then is also going to pull down the revenue side a little bit.
So you think there could be a double whammy coming? Let's get into that in a minute, but before we do, isn't that tomorrow's problem?
We've done a really bad job of looking past our nose when we look at problems. I mean, tomorrow's problem is coming here really quickly. I mean, that's not something that's really far down the road. So it's going to happen.
How far off do you think that flip? You said eventually it'll catch up on the expenses side.
Sure.
How far off into the future is that?
Oh, we will see it in the middle of the next budget, possibly even sooner. I mean, we could see a fall off in revenues because of world events and things that are happening. And you're not, unless you bring that inflation down, you're going to have a hard time having the people that do the work for the government do it at the budgets that we currently have.
Stock markets are not the economy, but they are a forecast of future economic activity, and we saw the markets feeling a bit queasy on the morning after the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
That's an understatement, yep.
Certainly safe language, I guess,
Yep.
more than a little queasy. But so you're talking about that, but on the inflation side, though, and on the expenses, so the other thing is the state has to buy actual goods. It's not the biggest bulk of state expenses, but it is a chunk. The
Sure.
state has to buy things that are now more expensive as well, and that might be one of the first things you see on the expense side of the ledger sheet start to creep up.
Yeah, you're seeing that now, and like you said, it's a small part of our budget, so it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And there are parts, really the one side benefit of this, and inflation overall isn't good, but it has really helped us with our pension debt. So debtors are helped by inflationary times because you're paying back debt with the cheaper dollar. So we had a really good run in the stock market, which cut our pension losses. But
There's something cruel about that.
Okay, yeah, I guess that might be might be where
your dollar doesn't go as far. You're in debt, but you can get out of the debt you are. I don't know. It just seems like
it is. It's not the way I would want to solve an economic problem like our pension problem, but that is something on the side that does happen. You know, 7% inflation essentially wiped $10 billion off of our pension debt.
So you're making these predictions. You're
well,
saying,
that happened.
Right, but I understand. You're making these long-term. You're saying, look, let's take the long view.
Correct.
A lot of legislators come here and they say, well, we've got this large ass of money, we've got all this extra cash going around, let's do the thing I value most now. How do you caution those legislators against that impulse?
Well, I think the governor already sees it. because he's doing a couple of things. He's not banking any of this increased revenue into even next year's budget that he proposed. He's talking about using more money to pay it towards pension debt, which I do applaud. And he's talking about maybe a rebate in different ways, and people are arguing about a rebate. I think the best thing that we can do this particular budget cycle is not bake in new spending, because we're not going to be able to pay for it.
He doesn't propose to do much of that.
Yeah, right. And on that, I agree with him.
He wants to expand state police, adding more cadets there. That's going to be a permanent expense. Could you vote for the budget proposal that Governor Pritzker put forward?
Obviously, it's a start, and there's some things in there about giving property tax relief, money back to people. I actually said after the budget address and looking at the whole picture, if he takes the approach of not starting a bunch of new programs, this may be actually the first budget that I do support.
Very interesting. Now, many of our viewers may recall Representative Batinick announced your decision to retire but you're going to fill the end of your term.
Correct.
So you're here. Does that make it easier to vote for a Democratic budget?
No. I mean, I've always kind of, if you look at my votes, I've always kind of done what I felt was right. I think I haven't gone with the herd always, so not necessarily. And by the way,
you use an interesting word, the herd there.
Well, and back to what you said about retiring. I'm not retiring. I do have to pay bills. I'm not going to go to Florida.
Is that a pitch for a lobbying firm? Or
No. I will be in the private sector back home, but.
Retiring from this building?
Yeah, I'm not
stepping
running
away
for re-election.
Okay.
Correct.
So you're leaving open the possibility you come back at some point, or
David Harris, former Representative David Harris, wrote me a really kind note. He actually left the legislature for 10 years and came back. Who knows?
And then he left and went into the Pritzker administration.
And then he left and went into the Pritzker administration. But he did take about a 10-year hiatus from the General Assembly. So you never know. It was time for me to step away, and you never know.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. When you look back, I think a lot of your colleagues describe you as a sober-minded, one of the cooler heads that might prevail in times of tempest in this building, especially in the House. We saw some of that last week and again this week. In caucus meetings, I know that's a sort of a sacred place where we're not supposed to talk about what happens there, but there was a moment earlier this week on Tuesday when the House Republicans pushed session back for about 2 hours to go and sit down and meet. And this was coming right after Leader Durkin met with Speaker Welch, and there was some hot tensions left over from the mask debate last week. What was that discussion? Does Leader Durkin have control of his caucus?
Oh, I definitely think Leader Durkin has control of his caucus. I think the one thing people don't realize is we're just a diverse group, and Republicans are inherently independent. So when you put 45 people that are representing their own districts that are vastly different, and have vastly different ways of representing them, it's hard to, they always use the term Republicans is like herding cats, Democrats is like herding sheep. So sometimes it can be difficult to get us all in the same direction.
Very interesting analogy you used there. I'll let Democrats speak for themselves on that one, and Republicans.
I'm sure I'll get some blowback on that,
but I see your general point. But isn't that also a sign that Democrats are just more unified than Republicans are?
You could look at that. You could look at it that way. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Eye of the beholder.
What is that pitch to the more independent or strident members of the caucus who say, I've already sued Speaker Welch over the mask mandate. I'm not backing down. I'm not bringing a mask with me to Springfield on my trip here. Do you just let them do their thing, or what do you do?
Well, I think you have to allow people to represent their district the way they feel it needs to be represented.
What does that have to do with representing your district, wearing a mask in a public space with your colleagues?
Well, I'll get right into that very specifically. We have gone 2 years without a public hearing on masks, mitigation, what the right way to handle everything is. We've gone 2 years with the General Assembly abdicating its duty. I will tell you this, we have gone 2 weeks now since things got overturned in the courts, right? Why the General Assembly the majority party wants to talk about how they care about the children. Well, if they cared about the children, why aren't we discussing that and possibly codifying and having hearings and putting a vote on the board about masks in schools for children? They're abdicating their duty. They're the ones that are playing politics. We want a seat at the table. Now, different people have different approaches on how to do it, but I can tell you this, we are all unified, and frankly, I think some of the Democrats agree with us on this. We are all unified that we should not have gone 2 years without a single hearing, without a single vote. And now it's been 2 weeks since the court overturned it, and there's a process to give the governor the authority to do some of the things that he wants to do that doesn't involve the courts, and the majority party doesn't want to do that, and that's a shame.
At least not until the Supreme Court weighs in.
Why are we waiting for the Supreme Court, and how long is that going to take?
Perhaps because the governor and the attorney general think that the law is already clear on this.
It's,
That's what they've said.
Yeah,
I'm not putting words in their
mean,
mouth. That's what they've said.
I don't think anybody thinks you should be ruling by executive order for 2 years in an environment where we're down here having discussions. I understand if you have a situation where a war breaks out or people can't leave their houses, where it's actually really, really difficult to get people together. We have been in this building. We're in this building today. We've been in this building for weeks. We've been taking votes on removing members for not wearing a mask. We haven't taken a single vote on giving the governor the direct authority to do what he's doing with the mitigations. Now, he thinks the law is clear. Obviously, a bunch of judges and courts don't, right? So it's gone to the appellate court. We had the TRO. There's a lot of attorneys and lawyers who don't think he has the authority. If it's so easy, just make it clear and do it the easy way.
Mm-hmm. Well, the easy way would also be the tough way for some of those Democrats who, like you just alluded to, may not want to actually have that discussion.
Right. They don't want to put a vote on the board on something. Look, they're
hiding behind the governor.
What's that?
They're hiding behind the governor.
They're hiding behind the governor, which is a shame. And I obviously haven't been anti-mask. I was the first one originally in end of March, early April 2020 to talk about, hey, maybe this is a way to get things back open again. We should put the mask on. But even the situation we're looking at now when we're talking about school children, if we care about school children, you answer this question for me. Is a student safer wearing an N95 mask and nobody else wearing a mask, or everybody else wearing a surgical mask or a cloth mask? What scenario is the student safer in? We don't know.
The safest is for everyone to wear an N95 mask,
which isn't what the governor's executive order is.
Well, no, it doesn't define the type of mask, should it?
I'd love to have a hearing on it. I would love to have doctors in on it. I'd love to talk to a speech pathologist, and I have because my daughter's one, about the downsides long term of wearing a mask. ESL. My wife teaches special ed. She has an autistic kid in kindergarten. Is that kid really served best being kicked out of school because she can't keep a mask on? There's a lot of cross currents here that you can keep bottled up for 2 weeks or 2 months that you can't keep bottled up for 2 years. And we should have had public hearings on this. Because the answer is, if the kid is safe for wearing an N95, then we should be providing N95 for schools, and we should have been working on that sooner. We don't know the answer because we haven't had a public hearing. And because we're not transparent and public about this, this is what sows doubt amongst the public. This is what makes people in certain districts say, I don't trust what's going on, and they just start pushing back because there's been zero transparency.
I happen to agree that a robust debate at the committee level, on the House floor level, getting into the issue, really parsing it out, can have a therapeutic effect when there are tense thoughts or fears in the public consciousness. I think that when you do that job of debating things back and forth, you help people really see those issues. And I've asked Democrats, including the Speaker's office, why don't you do more of these hearings? I think there could be a benefit there, a public benefit. But let me ask you this. When this goes to air, it will be Sunday. So tomorrow, the state enters that phase where we lift the mask mandate. We don't know yet how long Governor Pritzker plans to keep the school mask mandate in place. He's suggested it could stay beyond that day, even as he fights in court. Do you still see a public benefit in wearing masks in schools today at this phase of the pandemic?
Yeah, look, and this is one of the things, I asked for metrics, and I would have loved to have had some hearings on metrics. My theory always was if you put metrics in place in advance, it'll be easier for people to accept them. When you're trying to do things in the moment, then people start fighting back. One of the issues possibly could be, maybe we should wear the mask when there's outbreaks, when it's really bad, and take them off so that so people don't get tired of them or sick of them, like I hear people say. So there's a lot of ways to address this, but without those public hearings that we talked about, I don't know what the specific answer is. I know what we're doing right now is not the right way. You need to get public buy-in. And the way you have public buy-in is to do things transparency. And right now, the governor's lost the public buy-in.
Very interesting. We had a lot of discussion this year and so far in this election year about which candidates might emerge as the top candidate of the party. Richard Irvin is right now on the airwaves. Jesse Sullivan right behind him, trying to keep up the pace there. There are a lot of other candidates running for governor right now. Do you see any that you like?
Well, I'm a co-chair of the Irvin campaign. So
I should have known that. Yeah.
So, but I think there's a lot of good ideas and good people in the campaign, and it'll be interesting to see how things move forward.
How long have you known Richard Irvin?
It's interesting. He's probably, honestly, on a personal level, he's the candidate that I've known the least. However, my district borders Aurora, and for years and years and years, I've just always heard about the good things that the mayor of Aurora has done for the town of Aurora, friends that live in Aurora, and that was really one of my biggest draws to him.
You probably have seen the Tribune's reporting about his background. He is on the airwaves promoting his side as a prosecutor, tough on crime. But he conveniently omits the 15 years he spent as a defense attorney, where he defended people who assaulted police officers or who were in domestic disputes. And his websites was saying, here's how you basically beat the charges. I'm summarizing there. Do Republicans believe in the right to a vigorous defense in a court of law?
I think most Americans should believe in the right to defend yourself.
But why not highlight that as a part of who you are as a public official?
I have no idea. I can't speak for the entire campaign. But to your original point, I haven't read, but I knew that I haven't read the Tribune's reporting. I'm concerned about what he did in office. You're supposed to do your job, whatever your job is. And when he's been in office and held the office of mayor in Aurora, the people that I know, the friends that I have, the people that are involved there, have really always talked about how wonderful he is.
Very interesting. Well, there's an endorsement from Mark Batinick. Thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it.
When we come back, a closer look at some of the pushes to relax the workplace a bit for teachers. We'll explain that with House Democrat Barbara Hernandez next.